Hey Blue. So for the arc here, I figured that I would create an actual video for this one rather than writing up my notes because it just seemed easier. Um, this one is very much the clay Batmobile sort of thing in terms of really getting rough shape. Um, with this, I really like the profile being this long, thin thing. Um, and Ideally, this front area would kind of curve. That's one of the reasons why I made a video out of this. And not too much like the Homeworld 2 one, but I'm kind of thinking more, a graceful, like French curve type thing down and backwards some. I also really like the idea of having these kind of vent flaps back here. Just makes it feel a little, I don't know, cuttlefish-ish or so. And I also really like the idea of way on down at the bottom having some sort of little radio tower. Probably not two of them, honestly. I put in two, but um, you know, why exactly is this thing so tall, and why is there something sticking out at the bottom? Um, my thought is that it would be a really great place to put, for one thing, like radioactive or other destructive equipment, away from people, and it's also a good place to broadcast from. And so, um, having a radio tower that's got some nice scaffolding and stuff um, could actually also kind of look a little stinger like. And so if you've got this graceful curve with this radio tower stinger thing sticking out the back, it has this weird kind of combination of mechanical and vaguely organic, but still very sharp lines in the main. Um, Even with this quote unquote curve in the front, it could be something where it's a series of segments so that it still stays very angular. It's up to you, but thought it was neat as a possible idea. Then there's this. So yeah, I do like the idea of having these kind of like vent flaps back here. And one of the things that I was thinking of doing with these is making it so that these literally are able to kind of float up and down a little bit, kind of independently of one another, possibly. Um, Basically pivoting along this top portion here, and so um, it would look a little bit sea creature-ish almost in how these things would kind of waggle back and forth at slightly different speeds and thus independent of one another. So I was planning on having those as being animated joints, more or less. Um, then these little things here on the side, I thought about these as being um, basically like little living quarters or other places where the humans spend a lot of time. So there'd be a lot of like windows and so forth. And I like having some complexity to it so that, there is, the little wing thing doesn't need to be there, but having what's the most desirable thing in a like office building, for instance, right? I mean, it's a place where there's a window. And so having you know, a number of areas where there would be windows sticking out kind of in series to some extent. And then possibly having a section that's more kind of like storage or something that's over here. I don't know. It's I don't want to get too nuts into what exactly is everything for, but versus just putting a lot of little dots on there and like, oh, there's a little window. It's neat to have like some rhyme and reason behind what those things are. um I didn't include this, but I was thinking that the guns could be up around here, and basically, there's some guns that's that stick out that are pretty big that it can, shoot from. Originally, what I was thinking, and this may be the thing to do, is that there would be pods like this, little habitation, humans go here stuff on both sides. Then I was like, huh, what would it? It would be kind of interesting if we put engines on one side and had it be asymmetrical. And I don't know. I'm not sure that I really loved that in the end, but I just left it because I wasn't going to flip these anyway. So probably just put pods on both ends. But um, having some little thruster engine somewhere could be interesting. Or possibly that's what the purpose of what these things are, is that these, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So normally you would throw off particulates, which would be what a thruster does, or you could, well, these would have nothing to push against. So they'd have to throw something off. But at any rate, some sort of little maneuvering thrusters could be interesting actually along like here, just teeny little ones. This wouldn't need to turn all that often in the thematic sense. And then up here at the top, this really does not look the way that I want it to, but this overall type of arch, a better arch than this one, but all one piece too. The idea would be this is all one piece, but I didn't have. This is a Batman, you know, uh, mock-up, clay bunch of junk. So at any rate, having this be, a nicer part of the arc and um, arch in the arc, and then maybe having like a bridge and so forth up in here that uh, so that it doesn't look like a cockpit. It shouldn't be something that is a bridge on the top. Like nobody wants to look up. I mean, obviously there is no up in a spaceship, but we're kind of, we do have that orientation, thanks to just the inherentness of how people are looking at the game. And um, so if we're thinking of the top of this as being literally up, then I would think of the bridge as being kind of this thing that kind of wraps around, as kind of this line of windows, that kind of wraps around the front of this. And so you'd have this kind of 180-degree series of windows that is looking out, and like the most important ones are right here at the front as the bridge. And then up here on the top, we'd want some greebling of some sort, including I did little radar dishy sort of things, and they look completely lost and gross in the way that it is there. And this stuff here is just clipping through this particular element, so that has no meaning. But anyway, just some little visual interest. Bear in mind that a lot of the time the players are going to be seeing this in this fashion right here, and so having some elements that stick out is pretty important. They're occasionally going to come and see it looking like this more so, and they can kind of look at it like this, but they're never going to be looking at it like this unless they're in some sort of free view. More often than not, they'll see it like in these angles, and most often they'll see it along these lines. So having some visual interest from these extreme high angles is good. And then having all this kind of hidden stuff that hangs out down here is something that I think is really neat and adds to the excitement of coming down into this side view. But just bearing in mind that the top view is what people are going to see almost all the time, and they will see different, you know, um, extremities of the side view, of the top view rather. And so that's one of those things that you wind up with as you move around like I'm doing right now. That's also one of the reasons that I have some of the angles that I do. For instance, these are angled both back and up, and I put those on there just because I thought it was neat, as it kind of recalls the AI War 2, the AI War traditional logo in general, with the two spikes at the top, but rather than just going straight up, having them flare back some makes it so that you can see it at a lot more angles. And I actually had these rotate backwards slightly, as you can see. And so then that makes them slightly more visible on the side too. There's a little more triangle to them rather than it being, and it's a little more enclosing in the back. It was just something I was doing. I like the idea of there being three big exhaust things in the back here. They don't have to look remotely like this at all, whether they're circular or square or rectangular or whatever. It's up to you. But having three big exhaust things that are ideally more integrated than this, and if you want to have them be different sizes, probably largest, middle, smallest, or just all the same size, up to you. And Yeah, so that's more or less my kind of crude model. A lot of a lot of this stuff in the front I would see as being kind of like armor plating and so forth, and you got the big guns and these things, you know, there's a lot of guts to this thing, I would assume, and some sort of equipment that is really big and important that's all being stored all down in this section. And so mainly that's just got armor plating on it. And then the humans live away from all that big important stuff for some reason. The humans are actually relatively exposed out here, but assumedly during combat they could retreat into some sort of bunker sort of thing. I'm assuming that this is sticking out partially to keep them away from like maybe radiation or something, and also because hey, look at the pretty view. This is a place where the last of humanity has to live for a long period of time. And so having these kind of luxury, from a military standpoint, luxury items of, you know, windows, basically, a place they can get away from all the machinery on the inside, is pretty good. And these big old engines on the back here, they need a lot of stuff, a lot of machinery on the inside there. Excuse me. And then having, kind of the more executive, probably executive quarters, as well as um, you know, the actual player, like the admirals and that sort of stuff would be in the bridge here and stuff. And, I'm betting like some of the key engineering stuff would be in here, but it wouldn't have windows, it would be, um, if there were any like little loading docks or something, I guess those would probably be here. Like if there's little ships that are able to come in and out, that's probably where they would do it there. And then probably up these fins would be the other place, I guess. So, um, you know, I'm not going to give you a 15-minute video on every model, but this is the arc. There isn't one that's more central or more detailed or more important. And I just thought it was kind of interesting to put some extra thought into this one. I have no idea how many polys the thing I'm handing you is. It's probably a lot. And there's a lot of pieces that are a lot of repetition there. I mean, yeah, this is probably, um, yeah, actually, it's not as much as I thought. I was going to guess that it was tens of thousands. It looks like it's only maybe 20 at most. I was thinking it was probably trending towards 100,000, but it's not. So some of these pieces, if you want, you could actually reuse because I didn't resize them. No, that's a lie. I'm sorry. Well, okay. Never mind then. So yeah, I resized every bloody thing. So never mind. That makes all the UVs messed up. The UVs get messed up when I resize them. That's why they get skewed. Otherwise, they're fine. But I inevitably resize everything. So, alrighty. Thanks.